Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Mental Health Collab channel. We are so happy to have everybody join us for our very first episode where we're going to talk about some mental health and emotional wellness topics. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is very close and near and dear to Tina and myself, which is the topic of burnout and self-care. I think probably in some way we've all experienced it. I know as mental health professionals, Tina and I have experienced it, and we're definitely not alone. So I'm going to turn it over to Tina because Tina is the yin to my yang. I am not a statistics person. Tina is amazing at that. So she's going to intro what is burnout, give us some statistics on it, and we'll go from there.
Well, thanks, Robin. So yes, this is something that I think all of us have experienced at some point in our life or career. Maybe we didn't know how to identify it. So I wanted to just start with a definition. What is burnout? So according to Psychology Today, the definition of burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. It's usually caused by problems at work, but it can also, show up in parenting, caretaking, or romantic relationships. And one of the things that I found interesting, I am a statistics kind of person. I think it's interesting to understand we're not alone. So I found this statistic on apa.org that nearly 3 in 5 employees reported negative impacts of work-related stress, including lack of interest, motivation, or energy, lack of effort at work, cognitive weariness, emotional exhaustion, and 44% reported physical fatigue, which is an increase of 38% since 2019. So I thought that was really interesting, and we can talk a little bit about what do we think has been happening since 2019 that we're seeing such a huge increase in burnout.
So interesting.
So Robin, have you ever experienced burnout?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to jump right into personal stories, huh? I sure have. And I think what was unique for my experience of burnout is that it was in something that I love to do. I love to help people. I thoroughly enjoy my work and feel like it's a gift. And yet I needed boundaries in that also. Like I needed to have a balance where I was taking care of myself. So my experience of burnout came from a time where I was working for a company and I was fear-based. The company was fear-based. I was overworking, under-earning. I didn't know how to have my voice within the organization because it was a toxic environment. So I couldn't ask for my needs to be met. And more so, I felt like, oh gosh, I'm lucky to even be here. And I'm climbing this ladder and I got to toe the line or I'm going to miss my opportunity. And I remember specifically one time, like going and taking a bath and feeling like, oh, this is self-care. I'm taking care of myself. And of course, like I was coaching at the time. I had a lot of really great info, but I thought I'm taking care of myself. And I had my head down on the side of the tub and I just like fell apart. I just started crying and I didn't even know why I was crying. And then I thought, what is going on? I went, oh my gosh, I cannot remember the last time I had fun, I smiled, or I laughed. And my natural state is fun and positivity and being upbeat. And it scared me. It really scared me. Like I felt so disconnected from like the core of who I was. And it woke me up. And thankfully, I had a really great support system. And I called a friend and she was like, this is called burnout. And I thought, well, you can't be in burnout if you're doing something you love. And she explained it to me and she told me a really great kind of definition because this doesn't apply to all burnout. But she said, burnout is a result of having all of the responsibility and none of the power. What's going on was I was in a role where I was building someone's company and I was putting and pouring so much energy. I mean, late nights, early mornings, on call. And I realized that nothing I was doing was actually impacting anything because I didn't have the ultimate power. And I realized, goodness gracious, okay, I need to have some boundaries here. I need to take care of myself. And ultimately, I ended up leaving that organization. But it was low.
Yeah. Did you know at the time that you were reaching that burnout, or was it when somebody said, hey, this is burnout?
No, I didn't realize I was in burnout at all. In fact, I turned it on myself and felt like I was never doing enough, that what's wrong with me? I do this for a living. I should be able to, manage better. But this kind of goes into like a whole nother episode that we can talk about around over functioning. Like at my default, I'm a chronic over functioner. So I wasn't even aware I was over functioning until there was that level of cost. And now, thankfully, and I think that's the learning opportunity that's in anything challenging, I have a heightened sensitivity to it now. So when it starts happening, I'm going, oh goodness, oh, I'm going down this road, pump the brakes, bring my tools in and hopefully shift out of it. But I actually had no awareness that I was in it.
That's so interesting. Do you think if you had had that awareness ahead of time, that you could have recognized that you were approaching it and handled things differently?
I think so. I think what's probably relatable is that I was in an environment that was very gaslighting. So I think the toxicity of the environment, it wasn't really mirroring it back. It was really like, we care about you and we care about your well-being. And, we promote taking care of yourself, but the actual energy was not that. So I
Mhm.
think like now having the awareness, I would look at it totally different. But so many people, especially, I'm not trying to put down corporate America, but this is pretty prevalent in corporate America where there's a culture of like take care of yourself and lean in and all of these things, but they're just piling the work on you. And when we don't know how to have boundaries or we don't have the awareness of how it's impacting us, then we tend to kind of hit a bottom.
Mhm.
How about you? What was your story with burnout?
Yeah. Um, so for me, I've been in burnout on and off, you know, over my 15 years as a social worker, really not realizing it. Same thing. I love the work that I do. Um, and I've had periods where it's just, I'm emotionally exhausted. I can identify it better now that I'm a little bit healthier and I've done some work than I did before. Again, we live in this society where we glorify, we work, and we don't recognize, it's a yes, take care of yourself. But what does that actually mean? Okay, well, that means I might have to not come to work for a day, right? So for me, it was, I remember this specifically, and I'm embarrassed and I'm being vulnerable. I'm embarrassed by this, but we're all human and we want to learn from each other. I was actually running a caregiver support group of all things. So I'm, leading this group and it was just getting started and was, support groups. It's kind of like, let's introduce ourselves and talk about this, stress of being a caregiver. And one of my regulars, um, I had done my introduction, like, okay, we're going to start with blah, blah, blah. And one of my regulars said, well, do you think we should introduce ourselves? And I said, yes, and I snapped at her. I was like, yes, we're going to get to that. And I just was like, oh my God, I just snapped at a woman who's having stress about being a caregiver. And it was an enlightening moment because I was like, something needs to change. And, I went up to her and I'm probably more harder on myself than anybody probably realized. And I went up to her afterwards and I was like, I am so sorry. I snapped at you. And, she was like, oh, I didn't even really realize it. But that for me was like, I ended up leaving the job because I was so burnt out that, you know, something needed to change. Leadership was, supportive verbally. Yeah, go ahead and take care of yourself, but we're going to check your time card and make sure that you made it to work on time and all these things that you're required to do, even though we're adults. So that was for me one of the more significant recent times that I kind of recognized it and made a change. But I leading up to that, I hadn't really thought about it. It was not until I snapped at an innocent person that I was like, okay, something needs to change.
Wow. And I love the vulnerability in sharing that, because here we are, mental health professionals, we have the tools, we're still human, we have blind spots, we're students of life. But if it happens to us and we didn't see the signs, right? Like, then, I mean, it's just, it's
Mhm.
human for everybody.
Yep. Another thing that I want to kind of highlight as I recognize that, and I don't know, I don't know if I told you this. This is after you and I had worked together. We were friends, and I called you on my way home, and I was like, I'm burning out. I'm so tired. I can't. There's not enough hours in the day, and I had a long commute. And you said something to me that I'll never forget, and was really kind of changed the trajectory of my career. um, you said, well, what about, I think maybe I had called you on my lunch hour too, because I was so upset. And you said, well, could you think about something else? And you kind of processed it with me and went into problem solving. And I was like, I don't know if that's an option. And you said, um, what if you just let the universe give you some options? What if you were just open to opportunity? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specifically, but that, yeah, sounds like something I would say.
And it was like, it was like a light bulb went off, and I was like, well, why couldn't I be open to opportunity? Right? We are typically so focused on, this is my career, this is how it's going to go, I'm going to get to this point, and then I'm going to get a promotion, then I'm going to go here, that we're not really open to opportunity. And that's what changed. I left that job and I started my own practice. So thank you for that advice.
I'm so happy I gave you that advice. I think, like, we often feel stuck. I think burnout is a form of feeling stuck, which is a form of feeling victimized. And when we're stuck, we forget that there's options. And sometimes when we're in burnout, it's hard to find the solution, or feel like we can lean into the creativity or openness. But when you surrender it over to something bigger than you, whatever your belief system is, I tend to use the universe, we forget that we're co-creating, that burnout is actually directional. All feelings are directional. So that level of discomfort, it's pointing you somewhere. It's not pointing you to stay necessarily. I mean, it might not be leave the job, but it's pointing to, don't stay here. This isn't aligned for you. And sometimes when we're in burnout or we feel stuck in a work setting, I always give an example of like a container. Like, we've outgrown the container. So if you can imagine, like, you're in something you don't fit in anymore, that's uncomfortable. And that is, to me, the universe's way of saying, all right, you've outgrown this. So again, not everybody has the luxury of leaving. Like you and I, in our examples, we left.
Mhm.
Not everybody has that luxury. And of course, like, to be honest, because I never like selling the, like, I had an aha and then it was all great. Like, that wasn't what happened. I stayed for 9 months. It was really hard. And I had to kind of get my ducks in a row to get out of it. But it doesn't mean you have to leave the job, but it means I can't stay here doing this anymore. It's not in alignment for me. So if you look at it more so that discomfort is pointing you somewhere. And for you,
I
I
love
love that
that.
you could send it over to the universe and go, all right, I surrender. I admit I can't keep doing this. Help present the next step.
Yeah. And to be fair, mine wasn't I had my aha moment, but it wasn't like, okay, I just left the job. No, I had to take steps to plan and get things in order before I left the job. I had to talk with my partner and, have a financial plan to do that. So I don't want to give off the impression that I also just made a decision and everything was great. There's a lot of planning that goes in, but that's the step that we talked about in the last episode, is taking one step. So when we feel stuck, what one step can we take? For me, it was just being open to opportunity. That meant, okay, maybe I go online and see what other jobs interest me. That's a step, even though it doesn't, I'm not getting that job right now. It's a step.
Yeah, sometimes the step is again just getting curious. Like, getting out there and seeking what information is out there. Not that you have to up and leave. It's not gas or brake, all in or all out. But I think the most important part is that there is some level of pause to consider your emotional well-being or your physical well-being in that particular situation. So I think this is a great segue over to like, what are some physical symptoms, some emotional symptoms? Because what we were saying is we're technically experts and professionals in this, and that snuck right up on us, right? So Tina, can you tell us some of the physical symptoms and emotional symptoms of burnout?
Yes, yes. Yep, as soon as I find where I was. So some of the symptoms of burnout are feeling tired, drained, fatigued, feeling helpless, trapped. I think Robin had talked about that, kind of feeling stuck, defeated, feeling overwhelmed. Um, I can say I've experienced this, right? Feeling detached, feeling alone or cynical, having self-doubt or a negative outlook. Physical symptoms like headaches, stomach ache, high blood pressure, things like that, is what I found online. I can speak from experience. My own burnout presented as severe fatigue, severe like irritability for me, dread going to work, not wanting to engage in social activities. Like I was just drained. I wanted to go home and sit on the couch and do nothing. So how did it present for you?
For me, it presented like there was a decent amount of numbing. Like I would find myself like on my phone scrolling a lot or trying to do anything that was mindless. I think that was like the maladaptive way of caring for myself. And it honestly felt like a soul level of exhaustion. Like I'm a pretty, I mean, I don't know if hyperactive is the right word, but I have a lot of energy. So I don't typically my energy doesn't get too impacted, but it felt like a soul drain. Like I was just so disconnected from myself.
Mhm. What is that saying about your soul? It doesn't mean you need, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to look it up because I can't remember. Something about, not leaving you leaving something, but your body needing rest. And I'm
Mm.
butchering that. So I'll see if I can find that one too.
Well, I think a great quote, because I know we're really excited about sharing our quotes and our knowledge and our data with everybody. But one of the quotes that we found that we thought really encompassed this particular challenge is burnout is a sign that something needs to change. I did not see the author of that quote, so we'll say author is unknown, but I feel it. I
And
didn't
I
really
felt it
feel
that
it.
day, that day in the support group. I felt it.
Yeah, so I think it's really like I explain it in my work with clients is like truth knocks first and it will keep knocking until we hear it, and then the second knock is change. And I think that's the part, I mean the truth part is scary, but the change part can be even scarier. Like crap, I don't have another thing lined up. I need to support myself, or I'm in a partnership and the burnout is coming from that and I don't know what to do. So I think that's where like we're really passionate about, sharing resources. Like obviously a coach, a therapist, if you have the ability to connect with someone like that financially, books. There was so much information just from me looking very briefly online. Like that's where this information era we're in is really great. Also just seeking support from someone safe or someone that you trust, if again, you have that available to you. But I think what we'd love to share next is how do you manage it? Because I'm really passionate about learning emotional regulation, learning how to manage and tolerate our feelings. That's for sure most of the battle of these type of things. So I'm a big kind of formula person. I like to just kind of boil things down. So the formula that I hear for burnout is step one is awareness. And I think that's what we were sharing in our story, that like it took a pretty decent blow or two by four, to wake us up that something needed to change. So first of all, we need to just build an awareness of what's going on. And then like with anything, a pause. I think that a pause is probably the most impactful mental health intervention of all time. So if we can pause and get curious, and what I was explaining in my story was I actually got judgmental versus curious. So that's a really great shift, is to, if you catch yourself judging yourself, to shift to curiosity. What's going on with me? This isn't typical for me. I'm feeling disconnected. Just get curious with how you're feeling. And then the next step is action. And I think the action that we can help provide today is some tools to manage when you catch yourself or have an awareness that you're in burnout. Anything you want to add, Tina?
No, I think that's a perfect formula. You say you're not into statistics, but you are into formulas, I'll tell you that. And it
My
works.
background is in special education, so I like to really bring things down to the basics. And also I have ADHD, and so systems are the way that my brain functions. Otherwise, it feels super messy. So I hope that's helpful for other people. Just kind of boil it down into like a tangible, okay, I can do those steps. But I think the first place that we can start is setting clear and realistic expectations. Now, again, this is a short channel on YouTube. There's a lot of nuance into everything we say. There's a lot of individualness to everything that we're explaining. But most of us, if not all of us, at some point are guilty of setting unrealistic expectations for ourselves. And oftentimes we are in situations where someone else has unrealistic expectations of us. I have a client who's a teacher. He works in a Title I building, which Title I means that over 70% of your population is below the poverty line. He has mostly English as a second language students. And he calls me almost every session and we're talking about burnout. And what's happening, again, to go back to that definition that I brought up, like he has all of the responsibility, none of the power. He has to bring every single one of his 35 fifth grade students to this specific place of achievement in order for him to have done his job. And some of it is not realistic because he has unique learners in his room. And so we were talking about, like, sometimes we got to look at, like, it's not necessarily just me putting the unrealistic expectations on myself. The institution, the system, wherever I'm in, is putting unrealistic expectations on me. Okay, so we're looking at setting clear and realistic expectations. And then the next part, which Tina and I, in our dream of sharing our knowledge with all of the listeners, we pretty much said, gosh, every single episode will come back to boundaries. So yes, this is a show about mental health topics and self-help topics. It's probably also a show about boundaries, right? Because, like, without fail, they're the ultimate form of self-care.
Absolutely. It all boils down to boundaries. And in future topics, I'm pretty sure it's all going to come back to, it's going to relate back to boundaries, specifically with burnout today. How do we manage burnout? Well, we have to set some boundaries, realistic expectations too. You know, I work with a lot of people who just have this really, really unkind self-talk, you know, and when you ask them, was that realistic for you to be able to do all of these things? And they pause and they go, well, no. Okay, well, why do you have that expectation of you? If you wouldn't expect it from other people, why do you have that expectation of you? And we kind of process that. And it really boils down to how they think and how they talk to themselves. Right. And another great quote that I love, and this was kind of mind-blowing for me, is, you know, if being hard on yourself worked, it would have worked by now. The people I see,
Hallelujah.
the people I see are, they just keep trying and trying and try harder to reach these things, and they're so hard on themselves, and it doesn't, it's not helpful. So I think going back to, you know, what is a realistic expectation? Once we get real about it, then we're not so overwhelmed. We're not beating ourselves up over it.
And we would love to hear from anybody listening. Like, there's a lot of topics in one topic. So if there's anything where you guys are like, wait, how in the hell do I change my self-talk? How do I lower my expectations? Comment. please be kind because we're human beings too, but please comment. We would love feedback on what you guys are looking to learn more about. And we can do episodes just specifically on those because there's so many things we could dive into. But one thing that helps me as kind of like a North Star is I ask myself, what is the next kindest choice for me? And that can also have a lot of nuance to it. It can feel like, but wait, then I'm going to walk around the world so selfish and not considerate of other people. And if you're even considering that, you're considerate of other people. But the truth is, nobody is in charge of our emotional well-being but us. And I think your main responsibility in life is to take care of your emotional well-being and prioritize it. If you prioritize your emotional well-being, things will flow better, things will get better. So if you kind of look at what is the next kind of choice to me, is it nice to put these standards on myself? Is it nice to talk to myself this way? Is it nice to not have any communication or boundaries? Because there are simple ways. I understand, like, it's hard to have boundaries in work situations, especially if we're newer to boundaries, but something simple like, hey, I really want to do a good job here. I really want to give my all, and I cannot do that with another project. I really want to be helpful, but I'd love to get curious with you on how, like, can we wait on that? Could I get some more help on that? Like, I'm not saying that your boss or your superior is going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. But it's worth a shot, okay? Because part of this, the tools that we're giving you, is one of them is you got to do something different.
And along that line, Robin, we could ask, "Oh, I'm happy to do that task. What could I take off my list so that I could make room for that? Like, help me prioritize this list of tasks to, your boss. What's the priority? And could something else be delegated to someone else?" And, we're human, we are one person. And I think it's important to remember that we are human.
And it's nobody's job to advocate for us. That's
And,
the
and that's such a hard thing to, like, even when you said that, I was like, oh, that's
I hate it. I
that
don't like
hurts.
it. There's a lot of things that I give advice of I don't like, right? But it's true. Like, we're the only one that can take care of our needs. And that's what I call the unsexy part of partnership, is like, sometimes, like, we want our partner to read our mind. And a lot of times that goes along with neglect and what we didn't get growing up. But the truth is, like, we have to ask for it. We have to advocate for it. So yeah, sorry.
Sorry, and can we take out the word selfish? So many people feel like if they set a boundary or if they do their self-care or put themselves first, that they're selfish. And I wish we could change the meaning of that, or have it be more accepted that we can take care of ourselves and it's not selfish.
That's right. And I think we should do an episode about guilt.
Oh, yes.
It's really hard to get over that piece if we don't know how to manage guilt. And I think all of us, at least in my coaching experience, like, none of us are taught how to manage that. And it allows us to be in situations where we don't have boundaries. And really good to mention that if you're over functioning, someone else is under functioning. There's an equation that maths every single time.
There's a formula for you.
There you go, another formula. And guess what happens when we're over functioning and someone's under functioning? You get resentful.
Huge. And how many of us are walking around in resentment?
And how much does that contribute to burnout? And it puts us all, like, it is fascinating, Tina. I don't know if you found this in your work, but most people come to me with relationship challenges, like their relationship will bring them in, or a relationship with a family member or something. And we'll work on their relationship to themselves and their worth and boundaries and identifying their inner child and all of those great things. And then work will come in. Because somehow, some way, not everybody, but we'll recreate our family of origin in our work situation.
Well, and our work stress tends to spill over into our personal life. So if we're stressed out at work, we're bringing that home when we're not sleeping well, we're irritable, and all the things that go along with burnout.
Right. So this is like inspired me to think of little things that we mentioned in this episode to dive in a little bit more for everybody. But when we talk about boundaries, I know it's a huge topic and it can be really confusing and overwhelming and feel like a super uphill climb. But here's one simple thing that you can do to shift into just contemplation and awareness is just think about, what do I want to stop doing? Like if I could, doesn't mean you have to do it, but just start thinking about it. What do I want to stop doing? Or what do I want to stop tolerating? I take a risk with my clients because I truly believe this is true, at least in my life, and I believe for other people too. Like, you don't ever have to tolerate. You don't. Like, you might have to lean into, what's the word? You might have to lean into compromise. Sometimes, especially in relationships, we might have to lean into patience, which is loving, but tolerating is fear-based.
Mhm.
I don't like it.
And we think of unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance, right?
Mm,
And we can talk about this in another episode, but unconditional love doesn't necessarily mean partner relationship.
mhm,
One thing I want to go back to, as far as burnout, is caregiver burnout. I
mm.
don't think we as a society talk about this enough. I actually see a lot of people suffering from caregiver burnout, right? So it's either, and a lot of them, and I don't know if it's the demographic where I live, where I work, but a lot of them are women that are caring for, elderly husband or elderly father. And it's a really interesting dynamic. These women are taking care of borderline abusive fathers, demanding, expecting things, calling names, and not respecting boundaries, even though, you know, my clients are trying really hard, but they are exhausted. Dad's calling 5 times a day and demanding these things, and they will pick up the phone. And so when we work on boundaries, like, hey, what if you didn't pick up the phone? Oh, well, then I would feel bad. I would feel guilty, and just really not able to set that boundary because it's what they're supposed to do, right? They're the daughter, or the son, right? They're caregivers, and that's their role. And it's really hard for them to detach. You can be a caregiver and still have your boundaries. You can be a caregiver and take care of yourself. That was part of my support group, was learning how to still take care of yourself while you're taking care of someone else.
That's huge. And I hope it gave one person permission, that like you can still have responsibility in a situation, because it doesn't mean you just take off. Like, you want to stay in your integrity always, but that no matter what situation you're in, you can take care of yourself, because that's what boundaries really are.
Mhm.
Just means I'm taking care of myself.
So, Robin, what would it look like? What are practical boundaries that somebody could start implementing now?
Well, it brings me to yet another quote. We're doing a lot of quotes today, but there's one of my absolute favorite quotes with boundaries is from a spiritual teacher named Byron Katie. And the quote says, "A dishonest yes is a no to self." And as someone who in my default and wounding has a really hard time with boundaries and has a really hard time feeling like I have worth enough to take care of myself, it was really a great kind of structure to follow. Like, everything I would be agreeing to, I would really think about, is this an honest yes? Meaning, do I really want to do this? Now, again, we have to talk about guilt a little bit, because guilt can very easily come up and go, oh, it's not the end of the world. You can do it for an hour. And, but I think that when you kind of ask yourself, like, is this something I really want to do? and let's say it's no, I don't really want to do this. I'm doing this because I feel bad, or I'm doing this because I'm carrying an elevated level of responsibility. That no to self part means if I say yes to that, I'm neglecting myself. I'm abandoning myself. And you can tell me if this is true for you, Tina. I'm sure it is, but I've seen self-neglect and self-abandonment has a cost every single time.
Every
And I
time.
think that cost sometimes is burnout,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That we stay in that
Absolutely.
self-abandonment or that self-neglect long enough that we end up with a consequence. And sometimes that consequence is health related too.
Mhm.
Times we're sick or we have chronic issues from it. So it doesn't always have to be like an immediate consequence, but over time there will be a consequence. Over committing to things, which I was guilty of too, like left me in burnout.
Mhm. Some other practical ways to say no, like if somebody's hey, I need help moving next weekend. Well,
Mm,
no one wants to help move, but if you're you're the good friend, right? Hey, can you help me move a couch? Well, I can't on Saturday, but I can on Sunday, right? So you're still willing to help at a time that works for you, right? You don't have to drop everything because somebody needs something. It can be the compromise. I'm busy on Saturday, but I can help you Sunday or whatever that looks like.
and also like a no, it doesn't have to be because whenever I teach boundary work, which we can elaborate more in further episodes, but with boundary work, we can also say no in a way that isn't doesn't come across angry or mean, right? Because when I teach boundaries, it's anger is an alarm that a boundary's been violated, but it's not an invitation to communicate the boundary from. So we don't have to be like, no, or, get upset that the person even asked you. It could just be like, hey, I would really love to be helpful, but I don't have the capacity for that this weekend. Here's some moving up,
Yeah,
websites, or you don't even have to do that. You don't have to give, you can just simply say, no, thank you. And
but
that's okay.
it's not going to work out. I'm sorry. I hope you find somebody to help you. One thing that I do with some folks that has been really helpful is pause before you answer. So if somebody texts you, hey, you want to hang out on Friday night? Pause. We live in a society where we have to text back right away. And so, give yourself 1 hour. The client that I worked with, we actually said 24 hours for that particular person that was asking for something. So pause, maybe it's an hour. Check in with your body. How do I actually feel about this? To your point earlier, Robin, you know, is it an honest yes? If not, then find a kind way to say, I'm not available. Or I'm not available Friday, I'm available Saturday. Or maybe I don't want to go to a party, but I'd love to see you. What if we just hung out at home? Or something that's going to feel a little more comfortable that you don't have to mm, find yourself in a situation you didn't want to be in.
I love it. So basically what we're saying is you have choice,
You have choice.
right? You are not stuck. You have choice, be it work, be it overcommitting, be it in a relationship, but you definitely want to look at like what is impacting your bandwidth, because that's definitely something with burnout or just life in general. Like you cannot bargain with your bandwidth. Okay. And all of this stuff is easier said than done. So like I said, great to find other places of support or work with someone if you have that available, or write in our little chat here and say, hey, could you help us with communicating this? Or if you have a specific scenario, we might not be able to answer that specific scenario, but we might be able to weave it into what we're talking about in the episodes. It's all doable. If I can do it and Tina can do it, at least I shouldn't say that for you, but if I can do it, anybody can do it.
And same, I struggled with boundaries pretty much my whole life until I actually did some boundary work. And now I don't really veer from it, and it feels good because I know, that has boosted my self-confidence to know this is okay to have my boundary. If someone gets upset, that's okay. They're allowed to get upset, but I'm not responsible for their feelings.
Love
So
it.
for me, it's been life changing to actually have some boundaries.
So I think maybe the other maybe priority or tool that you can use is kind of broad, but it's really just connecting back to joy. I think joy is one of the first things that goes in burnout, because we're stuck in that hamster wheel of trying to accomplish something. And so prioritizing joy can be so on the micro level. Like it could be, I love doing crosswords. I haven't painted in a while and I love painting, doing a puzzle. Anything that brings you back to joy and creativity and back to your life force. And it can be something so simple. So it's not to add to someone's plate that's already burned out.
Right. Do more of what you love, more of what brings you joy.
Yeah. And of course, if you are in a place where you cannot access hope, you cannot access joy, I mean, that's a really great place to get a higher level of support. We don't want to sugarcoat this. I mean, I've experienced depression. I've experienced things that, those type of things just didn't work. So know that like there is help out there. And I think maybe that first step is just reaching out to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to just kind of tie it all together with a lovely bow, if you find yourself in burnout, some ways to manage it is to get curious with your expectations, to set clear expectations, make sure they're realistic, lean into setting boundaries or even getting curious with what you want to stop doing, what you want to stop tolerating. We want to look at self-care. What is the next kind of choice to self? We want to look at doing something different. If burnout means something needs to change, then we got to look at what can I not continue doing, or what is one small step or one small thing that I can do. And then of course, like always, seeking support, be it from a friend, be it from information online, a book, this podcast, a professional. I don't think any of us can do it alone. And I think in both of the scenarios that we shared, Tina, I had someone that helped me. And I know you told a story that I was a place of support for you during it. So we can't do it alone.
Absolutely.
And that's where the collab piece comes in, because this is the birth of everything that we're doing here on the show, is that Tina and I have been this really beautiful place of professional, personal collaboration. And we couldn't have done it without each other, right?
Absolutely.
So one thing Tina and I are very passionate about, and it's what birthed this show and the company that we started, is we want to be a place of support for therapists, for coaches, for anybody seeking self-improvement. And so we are very well aware that in our industry, there is a high level of burnout where we want to help the people that are helping people. So Tina and I created a company and a website. It's a marketplace for therapists, coaches, or anybody that is interested in self-improvement to be able to access quality resources that they can buy and sell from each other. And of course, sometimes there's free resources on. We're still in its infancy. We're still building content on the site, but we would love for you guys to go to www.mentalhealthcollab.com. Check us out. We're still building resources. We're kind of in our infancy, but we'd love for you to check it out. And if there's anybody that you know would benefit or would be interested in putting their own content on there, we'd be super grateful. So check us out. Okay, and I'm going to end this part of the show by giving everybody a reminder. I think we all need reminders. You are enough, you matter, and we're so glad you're here.
Thanks for joining Mental Health Collab, where we're embracing mental health one step at a time. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.